All right, welcome back. Let's talk about the Western Conference, kind of the preseason prediction standings versus the current standings versus where we can anticipate these teams being come playoff time. Over on this board, I know it's a little difficult to see. This is the preseason standings that I had coming into the year. This is only for the Western Conference. Starting off in the Central Division, I had Dallas Stars at the top. I had questions about how their locker room is going to manage and how Pete DeBoer would do his coaching there in the second season. They've been pretty good so far, but second place I had Colorado, the Avalanche. I had questions about their second line center and Johansson, and I had some little questions, but overall, those are by far my predictions to be the best two teams in the West or in the Central. Third place, I had Winnipeg. I made a case that Winnipeg would be sneaky good after trading Dubois, and they have. Third place is what I predicted. Minnesota in fourth place for my prediction, being the wild card team. Pretty much the same roster from the last year or two. Both were 100-point teams. I thought it was a safe bet for Minnesota to make the playoffs this year. And missing the playoffs from the Central, I had Nashville Predators because who knows what direction they're going in. Followed by the Arizona Coyotes, who I thought would make a jump from last year. Based on the way they finished last season, based on the talent, and based on some of the acquisitions they made that were kind of sneaky good. Second to last place, I had the St. Louis Blues because, again, what direction are they going in? They were so bad for parts of last year especially after selling at the trade deadline, they didn't really do much to recoup those losses at the trade deadline. I figured they were going to be a bottom of the barrel team this year. Last place, Chicago. Berdard is not going to single-handedly bring this team into the playoffs. That's almost impossible for one player to do. Even in Edmonton, you have a few key guys to help that team get into the playoffs. In Toronto, you have four pillars of offense over there. Right, so one guy, especially an 18-year-old rookie, probably isn't going to project you into the playoffs or really anywhere but last place. Kid is fantastic, but he's 18. Give him some time, man. He'll bump him up in the standings probably next year. Well, in the Pacific, I don't have any magnets for Vegas and Seattle. I got these magnets pre-Vegas. I've had them a while. I had the Edmonton Oilers winning that division outright. I thought they were going to pretty much run away with the division, but I had Vegas in second. Vegas, recent Stanley Cup winners. I picked them to miss the playoffs last year, and boy, was I wrong. Vegas looks fantastic so far. I didn't expect them to look as good as they have. But third place, I had Seattle. Seattle was really building something strong last year. I thought they had a good season, but I thought there was still more they could build off of. Fourth place, I had the LA Kings. I had questions about the Dubois trade and how they were losing some wing depth, and they had three great centers. One of those guys is probably going to play third line minutes. I had questions how that was going to pan out. I had questions about their goaltending. Missing the playoffs from Pacific, I had Calgary, kind of a repeat of last year. Vancouver, kind of a repeat of last year as well. I had questions. I know they got off to a hot start when Bruce Boudreau was fired and Rick Tocchet took over. But they also had a lot easier of a schedule. I ain't really necessarily think that bump in coaching was going to carry over into this year. Second to last place, I had the Anaheim Ducks. I thought they were a little improved with the additions of Leo Carlsson, with Mason McTavish in his second year. With an improvement to their defensive core, I think their defense is better from last year. I didn't think they'd be in dead last this year. I thought San Jose Sharks would be in dead last. Well, let's look at the current standings. Current standings, we'll start with the Central. Colorado Avalanche on top, 38 points, a .655 points percentage. A solid season so far. Colorado probably just biding their time until the playoffs come. They do have some things they need to work out, but for the most part, it's a pretty solid roster. They should be a lock for the playoffs. Second place, the Winnipeg Jets. I underestimated how good they would be. They have a very solid foundation. They're well coached. Hate or love Rick Bowness. I've had games where I've been watching. I really hated his coaching technique or his attitude or whatever. But he's a very effective coach, and a lot of people love him. The hockey guy is an example. He loves Rick Bowness as a coach. So no hate there, but he's done a great job this season managing that roster, managing that team. Hellebuck, even when he's looked like a league average goaltender, they've still won games in front of him, and it's been fun to watch. Winnipeg wouldn't surprise me if they finish in the top 3 at all. I think they're also pretty much a lock for the playoffs. Last team for a playoff lock I have is Dallas. I have questions about Dallas. I have questions about Matt Duchene and his offensive productivity. I have questions about Suter. He looks old. He looks slow on the ice, even compared to last year, which is fine because I don't like Suter at all. But nonetheless, if he's playing first line minutes with Miro Heiskanen, it's gonna put even more pressure on Heiskanen to play defense, which is gonna sacrifice some offensive production. I don't know. I just have questions, and as soon as you bump Suter down in a line or in minutes played, he's going to complain about it because that's what he does. That's what he did in Nashville. That's what he did in Minnesota. You got the intermissions. He's looking at the stat sheets, making sure he's getting his ice time. So that will be interesting. There could be some more to come with that. But honestly, I do have questions about this team. Jake Ottinger, hats off to you, man. You look great. That kid is solid in net. But this team is rolling. It's a really deep team. Excuse me. They have some guys in the AHL that are putting up incredible seasons that are due to be called up, and it's like, where do you put those guys? Because the roster is so deep, top to bottom. It's incredible. I don't think Dallas is going anywhere. Even if they do have some locker room issues, it may cost them the playoffs, but I don't think they'll have an issue getting to the playoffs. Fourth spot right now, we have the Nashville Predators. They've played okay. This is a 552 points percentage is honestly about right for the Nashville Predators. They're a very mediocre team. They have been for a long time. They had some blips where they made the playoffs. They had some blips where they really weren't a very good team, but for the most part, they're a league average team. This is about right for the Nashville Predators. They have a winning record. They're 16-13. I don't know how sustainable having a winning record will be, but honestly, with the way they've played, the amount of goals they put in the net, and the defense, and how I personally think the defense hasn't played up to their standard, nor has, UC Saros is great, but I think there's room for both of those, the defense and the goaltending to improve a little bit. Lankinen's been solid in net. But if those come to fruition, Nashville could be a potential wild card team this year. They're really duking it out. It's really Nashville, Arizona, and Minnesota will duke it out for that wild card spot. But Nashville has the edge right now because they're a little ahead in the standings. But St. Louis, 500 points percentage, the 5th team in the Central Division to be above the playoff line. I don't know what's going on in St. Louis. The fans are booing Kyrou, and that's okay. I'm not a really big Kyrou fan from afar. But, I don't know, man. I don't know. Hofer hasn't looked great in that. I have questions. I'm not quite sure this team is it's not very good. We'll see if changes come. It's going to be really hard to trade Kyrou's contract if it comes to that. I think this is a team that will sit below the playoff line. I don't see enough talent, and I just don't see enough talent on that team. Their defense has been pretty rough. They've let in a lot more goals than you'd expect a league average team to do, or a fringe playoff team. I have questions there. Next up, though, the Arizona Coyotes with 28 points. Again, 500 points percentage. I think there's potential with Arizona to maybe get a little better and have a bit of a winning record. I don't think they've really been all that bad. They've kept up in some pretty brutally tough games and matchups and stretches of games against some tough playoff teams. And honestly, they've held their own. They're still a young team. They're still learning. There's still defensive struggles on that team. But they're really building towards something special in Arizona. And it's the long-term build and the lack of pressure. And, they're playing in a college arena, right? So if they have a disappointing season, it's okay. It is what it is. But this team has a lot of talent on it, and a lot of these players are growing each and every game and getting better. So we'll see. Arizona, young, exciting. I don't think they're a playoff team at this point in this year, but I think they could make a push to at least be somewhat in the mix, or at least talked about as a team that could be an outlier that could, go on a streak and win and get into the playoffs late in the season. I don't think they get into the playoffs, but they could be hanging around for a bit. Seventh place, Minnesota. They fired Dean Evison, their coach, and all of a sudden with John Hines, they're starting to look more like the Minnesota Wild we knew and saw. The funny thing is this team hasn't changed the style of play from last year. We've seen more in-game adjustments from their new coach than the old coach, which has been great. But it's the same systems they've had throughout the past few years. It's the same style of play. There's been some adjustments. They're playing a little quicker. They're playing a more straight line hockey. It's a little simpler. But for the most part, the grips on the sticks are looser in Minnesota, and it looks like they're having a little more fun. And when you're winning, it's even more fun. So it's kind of a ripple effect there. Minnesota should vouch for a wild card spot this year, based on their play since John Hines come in. Now, remember, that can be a coaching bump. If they go on a losing streak, it could be very difficult to recover from that, considering their struggles early on in the season. But hey, who knows? It could be one of those things like we came from adversity back in the beginning of the season. We're not going to let this get to us. And they could make a pretty strong push throughout the rest of the year. Minnesota, Nashville, Arizona, all potentials to make that wild card spot. I think it'll come. I think Minnesota will grab it, but it's not going to be an easy grab considering where they are in the standings. Last up, the Blackhawks have just looked terrible. The injury to Taylor Hall didn't help. You got antics going on all over the ice, and I don't know. Corey Perry is like no longer with the team, and it's just been Chicago Blackhawks hockey over there. I kind of feel bad for Bedard being thrown into that scenario, but he's very talented and will win games for this hockey club. They're coming in last place. They're currently the favorites to win the first overall draft pick of this year. So we'll see how mad people get if that happens. Pacific Division, we got Las Vegas having an incredible year. Bruce Cassidy over there, the coach of the Vegas Golden Knights, is incredible. He's just pushing every single right button, and there was no Stanley Cup hangover. They came in firing on all cylinders, and they're continuing to do so. They are on a tear this year. Vancouver Canucks in second, surprising 41 points. What is that, a 683 points percentage is insane. I will say that they are kind of like Vegas and really all of these teams. A lot of the games have come against weaker Western Conference teams. I do think the Western Conference isn't as competitive as the Eastern Conference in terms of the quality of teams. But you got Vancouver, who beat up on Edmonton when Edmonton was down in the dumps, like they couldn't do anything. Minnesota, one of their 4 wins in the first 20 games came against Edmonton, right? The one time they played. It's just like Edmonton, I don't know. So Vancouver, I think their schedule will get a little more difficult, a little more challenging, but at the same time, honestly, if they play defense, they're getting good goaltending from Demko. Demko is solid in net. You got some offensive firepower, especially in Elias Pettersson, who's playing a great 200-foot game. Shout out to Pettersson. And you have other guys that could potentially step up because Kuzmenko isn't scoring at the rate we expected him to. There's a lot going on in Vancouver, and a lot can change in Vancouver in a short amount of time. But they're making a really good case to make the playoffs at this point. I think LA will pass them. They're currently in third place. I think Edmonton could pass them, but Edmonton has a long way to go to catch up to Vancouver. I don't know if they can at this point in the year. I have Vancouver at a minimum making the wild card at this point. Still only a third of the way through the season. We still got time. I'm not doing projections just yet. I do that halfway through the season, but it wouldn't surprise me if Vancouver made the playoffs this year, which would have surprised me a couple months ago. Third place, we got the Los Angeles Kings. Keep in mind, the Kings have only played 26 games. Vancouver has played 30. Yeah, the Knights have played 32. I thought there was a weird number in there, but I guess not. So sorry for the pause. Los Angeles, 36 points in, what did I say, 26 games? 692 points percentage is still elite. That's better than Vancouver. They need to keep up winning if they're going to pass Vancouver. They've lost 2 in a row. I still have questions. I don't think their goaltending with Cam Talbot is sustainable. He's playing out of his mind. He is not that good of a goalie. He's a solid goalie. He's a 1A, 1B. Like, he's a fringe starter in the league. But to the credit of the LA Kings, they've played very good defense in front of Cam Talbot. The offense has back-checked very well and played solid defense. The team is putting the puck in the net. Wow, I didn't realize they only have 65 goals against. I think is that first in the league? 65. Yeah. That's nuts. Shout out to the Los Angeles defense. The offense is good, right? 94 goals for is pretty solid. It's a good number to be at. I don't know. I got questions. About most teams, but we're just talking about the questions about LA right now. So we'll see. I think they'll fall back a bit from that close to 700 points percentage. I don't think Cam Talbot will win the Vezina this year. If he does, that will still surprise me, even if he's a front runner at this point. I don't know, man. Fourth place, missing the playoffs, you have the Edmonton Oilers, 27 points, a 500 save percentage. It's the same points percentage. I think I said save percentage. Points percentage is 500. Same points percentage as the Blues and the Coyotes. It's just really weird. The Blues are in the playoffs. The Coyotes are out of the playoffs. The Oilers are out of the playoffs, right? You should have 500 points percentage should not make you a playoff team in the NHL, and it usually does not. Edmonton, though, been on an absolute tear. What are they? They're 8-2 in their last 10. After the coaching change, they really started to figure out how to play. They're putting the puck in the net. Connor McDavid looks like Connor McDavid. Draisaitl with his weird angle goals. It's just beginning to click again for this team. I don't see them slowing down. They went on a hot streak to start the year last year. I think this is their hot streak kicking in this year. I think they'll be back off into playoff contention a lot sooner rather than later. They're only 5 points out of the first wild card spot and 2 points out of the second wild card spot. So I'm not too worried about Edmonton. I think at this point they might be too far out of first place to really get the division title. But Edmonton looking good. I think they'll be all right. Fifth place Calgary, which is where we predicted them to be. There's no surprise there. They're not great, but they're not like the worst team in the league. There's still talent on that team. Markstrom out with an injury. Vladar has looked all right. They played against Minnesota last night. I thought Vladar looked excellent last night. That was one of his better games. He doesn't usually look that great. I love Vladar. I'm a big Vladar fan. He's definitely had some rough games where he's let in some soft goals throughout the year. I don't think the defense has necessarily helped, though. I don't think they've played particularly well in front of their goaltender. Some of their guys have been out of position, and some of the more reliable defensive defensemen have been out of position. And I don't know what's going on. Maybe they're adjusting to new systems or new defensive tactics, but I have some concerns about that. The offense is it is what it is. Where are they? 89. It's really it's really just their defense and letting in nets. Their goaltending. It really hasn't been great this year. It's been kind of letting them down. But I don't see that changing a whole lot. Markstrom could come back, go on a hot streak, but at the same time, their defense also needs to figure it out, and they are more than capable of figuring it out. But, it is what it is. Huberdeau also, needs to get back to his I don't know, live up to at least some of his $10 million salary. He's not doing that right now. Sixth place is Seattle Kraken. Kind of surprised me, 27 points, a 435 points percentage. Yeah, to be fair, their defense has looked awful and their goaltending hasn't been great. Grubauer, decent start to the year. After a few games, he looked like Grubauer from last year's regular season. Joey Decord's been called up. He's been okay. I don't know. I just have questions about this team, man, in terms of their defense and their offense. Their dynamics changed a little bit. I think they lost a little bit of toughness from last year, which is ironic because I don't think of Ryan Donato as a tough guy, but he was a physical presence for this team last year. He would grind it out. He would drop the gloves. I think they're kind of missing that a little bit this year. They're missing kind of the team defense atmosphere this year. I don't have an easy answer for you as to why Seattle has fallen so far back, but it's pretty disappointing. I really thought they were going to have another 100-point season, and I know I was in the minority in predicting that, and I'm upset that it's not coming to fruition. Seventh place, though, San Jose Sharks. Sorry, my throat is so dry. Remember a few weeks ago when I had to make a video about the San Jose Sharks? Probably not going to be the worst team in NHL history, but we had to talk about it because everybody else was talking about it. Yeah, they're not in last place in their own division anymore. In fact, they're third to last in the Western Conference. Chicago's in last, Anaheim second to last, San Jose third to last in terms of points. Wow. What a turnaround. This team's played well the last 10 games. They're 6-2-2 in their last 10 games. Their defense and their goaltending, their goalfence, hasn't looked great, but has turned around a little bit in the last 10 games. They've looked better. They've had a bit of an easier schedule. They've been playing closer, tougher games. They're still a bottom-of-the-barrel team. They're still 1 point above Anaheim. And Anaheim 1-9 in their last 10. They've lost 4 in a row. I got questions about the Ducks too, but both were bottom-feeding teams coming into this year, and nobody anticipated them being a playoff team. I was shocked when we were 10, 11 games into the year, and people were saying Anaheim was going to make the playoffs because they got off to a hot start because they had a pretty easy schedule. That's craziness. This is why you wait to do really standings reviews videos. Even this is still a little early. But San Jose, Anaheim could be duking it out for that last spot. I do think Anaheim has a better constructed team than San Jose, but San Jose has some secret firepower. You got guys like Granlund who can dish the puck and shoot. He could be a 20-goal scorer. You got guys in San Jose that can put the puck in the net and defend. You got Kalen Addison, who's a young defenseman who can really play point on the power play. We'll see. It hasn't been great so far in terms of his power play production this season. In Anaheim, you need some guys to step up. You have Mason McTavish, who's been fantastic this year, but you have guys like Troy Terry, who's I think he's been a little better as of late, but he hasn't had a great season. The defense, a lot of question marks there. What's going on? Again, I don't think it's as bad as last year's, but you're not getting goals and you're not getting defense and saves when you need them to. I don't think either of these teams will finish higher than 7th. I think these are the 7th and 8th seeds, but in what order, I don't really know. I guess we'll find out. That's it for this video. Obviously, let me know what you think, where you see teams finishing, what teams you see jumping in and out of the playoffs moving forward. Love to hear your thoughts. The preseason predictions in terms of that, Seattle probably not going to make the playoffs at this point. I don't see them with the way they've played throughout the season so far. I don't see potential for them making the playoffs. The Canucks, I'm sure, will make the playoffs in place. That's pretty set. Calgary is forever in 5th spot. Nashville, probably. This is probably pretty close to how they'll finish, honestly. I can see the Blues falling back. I can see Arizona and Nashville vying for that playoff spot, but Minnesota just being an overall better roster and more cohesive group, kind of pulling it out to be that last wild card spot. I think they're a wild card 2 team. I think the West top 4 is a lot stronger than the Central top 4. So we'll see. Let me know your thoughts. I appreciate you. Take care, right?